program at Ofcom. And for those who do not know, Ofcom is basically the regulator for the communication services in the UK. Federico is as well a visiting professor at the University of Bristol, and he is a fellow of the Institute of Engineering and Technology. So without further ado, I think I give the ball to Federico that he can start the presentation of his talk.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Okay, I'm going to share my slides. Can you see them?
They are coming, yes. Yes.
We can see.
Has to be full screen, right? You can see them full screen.
Yep, now it's full screen. Thanks.
Okay. First of all, thank you, Lorenzo. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And it's also an honor that my presentation is after Laio's presentation. Laio, as always, was very inspirational and a really wonderful presentation. I also see a lot of friends of my time in the labs, Costantino and Oliver. Nice to see you. Just before starting, I just wanted to say, if you hear screaming or crying, I have a 1-year-old daughter, so no worries. I'll try to keep the door closed. So now going to the presentation, I've changed a bit the title to focus on mobile networks. So rather than being broad, I'll try to speak about 5G and beyond 5G systems and aspects related to mobile networks. I have different objectives for today. One is to show that working in technology in a regulator is not boring, as I thought before it's an Ofcom, and maybe convince some of you to apply for some of the openings that we have for technologies in Ofcom, but also to show how skills are changing in the telecom market, especially in a point where network and IT are converging. It's something I think at your stage, the stage in your career, you should think about. And finally, what I would like to discuss, if there is time, or probably, I suspect there's not going to be much time via email discussions after this presentation, is some of your ideas or things that we should be thinking of as a part of this emerging technology program in Ofcom. So Ofcom is the regulator of the communication services in the UK. There are many things we are doing, from the leasing spectrum to regulating broadcast content to even regulating the postal services in the UK to protect consumers and so on. But rather than being broad, I wanted to give you some examples of what we did for mobile networks, and in particular 5G. And one of our main actions was is to release new spectrum bands. 2 years ago, we had 3436 spectrum auction, and the 3438 band is one of the main bands, and it's now the main band in Europe for 5G. And we're also preparing the next auction, which is going to be 3638 and 700 megahertz. And this is related to sustaining traditional players in the mobile market in a way to provide services across different geographies in the UK. But it's also, and this is point two, is about lowering the barriers of innovation for new players and for new services in a way that finally consumers and businesses in the UK are going to be enjoying new services wherever they are. And give you some examples of our activity in this area. But mainly it is about enabling local access to innovative services without going through the traditional players like mobile network operators. 3, and this is related to Laio's presentation, is about improving connectivity in hard-to-reach places. It's not only rural places, but it seems very trivial, but indoor coverage is not as good as it should be. And with 5G, there is the risk that indoor coverage is going to get worse, in part because of frequencies going up, in part because of the so-called 5G services are actually, many of them are actually targeting indoor users, so they might not be coming from 5G systems. and I'll speak about it in my presentation. I will not speak. I will not spend much time on security, but what I wanted to say here is that Ofcom has very important duties on security, and together with the government and the Network Cybersecurity Center, we are making sure networks in the UK are secure. The fact that standards are secure and 5G is a more secure standard than 4G doesn't mean the networks are secure, because from designing a standard, a telecom standard, into implementing, deploying a telecom mobile technology, there are a lot of steps that we need to make. And security resilience are really part of our focus, and our team on security and resilience is probably the one that is growing the most. And things that we are doing include testing the networks, include agreeing with mobile network operators how the way security and resilience are built in the network should improve. We are designing together with the government, some security and cybersecurity requirements, so setting a higher bar for security in the UK. And we are also working with the government on the discussion on supply chain diversity and high-risk vendors, and I'll come back to this later on in the presentation. A lot of what we do is related to working with other regulators, working with industrial players all over the world. Basically, I have a call with other amazing vendor or startup basically every day. For us, it's very important not to work in a bubble, but to be very connected to what's happening outside our building. And finally, and this is the focus for today's presentation, looking at emerging technologies and how they impact the sectors we regulate and the work that we do. And we look at emerging technologies from a perspective that is a bit different. For us, what it matters is looking at technologies, for example, that might enable new services to be deployed, or might enable existing services to be deployed in a wider or be more widely available for a higher number of people. It's also about increasing the performance of networks so that quality of experience for consumers gets better. It is about lowering the barriers for new providers, new services, enabling more choice for consumers, about reducing the cost, and about reducing the environmental impact, and about increasing security resilience. So it's slightly different lens than the lens industry is using, but it's really at the center of what we do, and it's becoming more and more important because the pace of innovation is increasing nowadays. For this presentation, I'll focus on three different areas that are key for our emerging technology program at the moment, and I'll discuss rapidly other areas that are as important, but simply there is no time today to touch on all of them. First one is open deployment models, and more broadly, what's happening in the convergence between IT and networks. The second one is private networks, and then the third one is about coverage, increasing coverage. As I said, not only in rural areas, but indoor, along roads, on trains, for example. Now, the first part is about the convergence between IT and network, and there is a lot happening in this area. It matters to us for different reasons. First of all, because we are involved in acceleration programs together with the government. I.e., what we do is we finance and we participate in the testing and trials of new technologies in a way that we have the acceleration of these new technologies when we think they're going to be beneficial for consumers. But second, because it's very important in the context of broadening the supply chain one of the issues in the mobile industry today is that if you look at the mobile market, the mobile infrastructure market, we went from about 10 to 15 years ago being between 10 to 15 vendors to basically today being 3 in the UK. And the government has identified this as an area to improve and basically to allow to lower the barriers for new entrants and to allow a more diverse supply chain, because this is an impact on innovation, has an impact on security, has an impact on resilience of the networks and so on. And I identified 5 different trends in this area. One is about disaggregating hardware and software. Basically, we are going in the mobile industry, we are going today to the same phase as the personal computer industry went 20 years ago. If you remember, it was a phase where we went from a vertically integrated PC market, where IBM and Apple were basically designing end-to-end a personal computer, to a horizontally integrated supply chain where different companies were providing different components. For computers was the motherboard, the RAM, the chipset, and the operating system, and so on. So this is happening now in the mobile industry, and there is a trend of trying to separate hardware from software, both at the radio level and the network level. And it goes together with cloudification, again, another trend where many of the things that were done in boxes locally now are being brought to the cloud, which could be the edge cloud or the central cloud. And 2 weeks ago, for example, Microsoft announced they acquired 2 companies working in this space, which signal their interest in broadening to the mobile industry. And Amazon is also offering service in this space, and I think they announced a service called Wavelength. So Wavelength is about bringing AWS to the edge, and Nokia is using Amazon for providing core network services within AWS, just to give you some example of what's happening. Virtualization is about running network functions virtually in virtual machines or Dockers, and the 5G cloud has been natively designed to allow it, because the 5G cloud has been designed in a way that different services are provided as functions that can talk to each other and can run in different parts of the networks. And finally, open network APIs is about bringing value into the network and opening the access to the network to different players. And I know I don't have much time, so I'll go very quickly through the next slide, and I'll spend more time on why I think this is relevant for you, for the research you are doing. One example of a company that is entering this field is Rakuten. I don't know if if you are, all of you are familiar with Rakuten. Basically, Rakuten is the largest Japanese e-commerce, and in the same way as Amazon, they have a very strong ICT ecosystem that they can exploit. They used to be a mobile virtual network operator, and a couple of months ago they launched their 4G network. And they could launch their 4G network in a completely different way, because they didn't have any 2G or 3G network they had to be compatible with. So they could start from scratch with a very different approach. And this is what they did. So basically, they use ICT Concepts to build their network, where rather than deploying boxes or thinking of two networks as a set of boxes, they deployed functions and different functions in different parts of their network. And they do it in a way to be able to use very different providers, and I am listing some of them on the right side. And looking at what their CTO, who is a very vocal person in this community, is saying basically they've done it by using very different skills than in the past. So I think he said that 60% of the people that used to deploy this network are not network engineer, but software engineers. And if we zoom and look, for example, at what they did for RAN, so for the radio side, they started to look at so-called open RAN solutions, which is about separating hardware from software and opening interfaces between different parts of the RAN. Now, this is not the solution for all the challenges we have, but it's certainly an area we should look with attention to. It has some benefits. Costs are going down, and again, Rakuten CTO is saying that CapEx is going down, I think, about 40 to 60%, and OpEx is going down even more because by designing networks in this way, we can rely more on automation. It lowers the barriers for new entrants because now, by relying on open interfaces, new companies can come in and focus on some aspects rather than on the whole end-to-end network. At the same time, there are some challenges. One of them is integration between the different suppliers. The other one is scale. Can this solution be able to serve very dense areas, for example, or be provided in thousands or millions of numbers rather than tens or base stations? And this is an example of what, again, Rakuten is doing for RAN. You have Altistar for baseband. I think there is Nokia on this side of RAU. There is Cisco that is working on orchestration, and there are other companies. So you're going from one single end-to-end suppliers to many. And one of the challenges is security, because one of the differences with the past, where you have single vendor, a single supplier looking at security end-to-end, here you're basically disaggregating also the way security is implemented, and we need to think about new ways of looking at security. When I think about containers, for example, clearly containers bring some benefits with respect to virtual machines, but then there is a question about isolation. When I think about API exposure, there is a question on who then is managing security, or whether security should be managed by relying on end-to-end security, for example, using VPNs and so on. The reason why is important for researchers in this field is because today networks haven't been designed by having these concepts in mind natively from scratch. And one example I usually give is MIMO. MIMO was introduced in 3G systems, but was only natively introduced in 4G systems. And it was in 4G systems that we could see the real major gains from multiple antenna systems. So really, in order to harvest the gains of the given technology, you need to build it up, build it in standard from the beginning. So the question is, how do we build 6G or beyond 5G standards by having this in mind? And security and resilience for cloud-based network design using open principles is also a big security challenge, and a big space for research and innovation. Interoperability, as I said, it's about having many different suppliers. How do we make sure they all work together well? Simply having open interfaces might not be sufficient. We need a way to test with different suppliers and to make sure they work together well. When thinking about what happened from in personal computers during the 80s, I wonder if there is a need of a radio access network operative system or multiple operative systems. And again, this is something for you to think about. Moving to the next part of the presentation, it is about private networks. We are coming from a world where we have basically 3-4 mobile networks in each country. In the UK, there are 4 mobile networks: Vodafone, EE, O2, and 3, plus a bunch of very small mobile networks. But we are going in a world where there will be many private networks deployed to provide solutions to specific problems. Now, in these slides, I give examples about digital transformation in different sectors. The one on the left is an online supermarket. The one in the center is an example of salmon farming in Scotland. And the one on the right is a whiskey producer again in Scotland. And the last two are part of a project called 5G. So these are very different industries with very different skills. The one on the left is very high tech. The one in the middle as well is very high tech, and I couldn't believe it when I went to see some of the videos. Is really high tech, but the one on the right is less high tech. But there is something in common across these three, that these are all relying on private mobile networks to provide digital services. Things we are doing in Ofcom in this space are across 4 areas: spectrum, technology, ecosystem, and security and resilience. Ecosystem is particularly important because, as I said, there are very different industries ranging from very large to medium and small with very different skills. In addition to this, they are not familiar with the mobile industry, with the connectivity industry. So sometimes what we notice is that there is the need to create a communication channel between them, between the different so-called vertical industries and the network infrastructure providers. And this is what we've been doing in Ofcom in the last year or so. Something else we've been doing is to release new spectrum bands and skip it. And then this, I think, is revolutionary. So we are going from spectrum bands that are deployed with nationwide auctions to spectrum bands that are deployed locally. So basically, you could, if you live in the UK, you could apply for a local license in your home with a, say, 50 meters radius and deploy your own mobile network by using a Raspberry Pi, for example. In the same way, a business like Ocado or a business like a salmon farm in Scotland could apply for a set of local licenses to cover the given surface they need. We have different products: low power, medium power, different bands, indoor, outdoor, and so on. But the point is, it is very easy and very cheap to apply. For example, you need only £80 to apply for a 10 MHz license at 3842. Basically, you could, if you wanted, deploy the 5G service on a chip, basically, by using this spectrum and by using open disaggregated solutions. And that's why disaggregation is also important in this context. One of the issues we had was to support very different business models, from players that required using a public network to players that required using a hybrid solution to players that wanted to deploy a fully private network because they wanted, for example, to have full control on their data. And again, with the cloud, we saw examples of players using a public cloud in AWS, for example, to using a hybrid cloud deployed by IBM to a solution deployed by them via private cloud. And as a case study, there is not much time, but a case study is I want to show you how many options you have in terms of technology, 4G, 5G, Wi-Fi, proprietary technologies, widely solutions for IoT, using very different bands and using very different business models. And this is where we see our role, basically an intersection between technology, business models, policy, in a way to make sure that we provide the right enablers for this thing to happen and to be real. Lorenzo, I think I have other 10 minutes.
Yeah, I think you can. I mean, officially it will be 10:30, but you can use few more minutes, no problem. So, yeah, go ahead with your presentation. We have the break anyhow in between before the next speaker, so I think we can use some time there. No problem.
Perfect. So I'll try to skip some slides and go to this one, which is important, which is opportunities for research and innovation. I think that there is a lot to do. Again, because current networks have been designed to provide massive public solutions. 3GPP is currently working on private networks as a part of the Release 16 and 17. Is providing enablers for private networks. But again, this is patches that are introduced on a standard that was probably designed for something else. So there is something to do from a research perspective. I think if you were to design from scratch a standard targeting industry 4.0 vertical applications, what would you do? Which things you would do differently? And one example is with spectrum sharing, because our current approach, if you think about it, is innovative from a commercial perspective, but it's not innovative from a technology perspective because it's very static. It's using very traditional ways of measuring interference into other services that are sharing spectrum into these bands. So we could do something completely different, for example, enabling on distributed spectrum access based on blockchain, based on machine learning. One example is the DARPA Spectrum Challenge, to really adapt the way you transmit based on what your neighbors are doing, based on open interfaces. But also, if you think about high frequencies and millimeter wave and terahertz, there is a question on whether which is the right type of spectrum access. Do you need exclusive spectrum? Do you need a license at all? Can you rely on a licensed spectrum access? Cybersecurity again is a big thing here. There is no time for the details, but there is a space we are working a lot on cybersecurity for private networks. And related to connect these parts, this area to the first area presented in my presentation, having cloud-based solutions, having open solutions, having disaggregated solutions enables more players to basically to start with a small capex without having to buy very expensive hardware, but starting small and then scale it if needed. Another area I wanted to cover is hard to reach places, and I wanted to start by saying our goal is to make sure that people have connectivity where they need it. It doesn't mean that connectivity has to be everywhere the same. So, for example, a busy stadium needs to have very different connectivity enablers than a rural area. But that doesn't mean that in a rural area, innovative services will not be available. But the situation in the UK is not. We start from a good point. Although the gap between rural and urban areas is still high, in rural areas, we are not starting from a connectivity that is available in a small percentage over geography. Because if you look, for example, about connectivity in the proximity of premises, which is where people live, is already available today by EE, the best one, 95% of the premises. 3 is the worst one in this case, 90% of the premises. Outside premises, because the moment you go inside, as I said, is different because of inverted attenuation, but outside premises is a good starting point. When you look at geography, and this is what Laios was speaking about, when you look at geographic coverage, which means not only premises, but beyond geography, there is more to do. If I take as an example Scotland, here EE is 70%, O2 and 3 are around 58%. In England is better, but partly because in Scotland there are more rural areas than in so there is more difficult, it's more challenging. Overall, looking at the UK, and there is full coverage, which means in 66% of the geography, there is coverage by the 4 UK operators. So, for example, I don't think UK is much worse than France. Actually, I think you're probably, even if you have an offline discussion, your figures were referring not to coverage, but to where there is a demand for mobile services, because in the UK at the moment, all the green areas are covered by 4 MNOs. Yeah, orange, there is partial coverage, and gray, there is no coverage. Doesn't mean that it's perfect, it means a good starting point. Also because green means 2 megabits per second, doesn't mean 10 or 100 megabits per second. If you move towards 5G or services requiring a higher data rate, there is more we need to do in the future. But for you and thinking about research in this space, what I think is interesting is to look at the intersection between technology, policy, and business. And because it's by looking at technology alone, we're not going to solve this. By looking at policy or business models alone, you're not going to solve this problem. So you need to work with the intersection between them. From a technology perspective, there are different solutions. And Laios presented a technology we are really monitoring very closely. There are other ones, for example, informing repeaters that are built on existing solutions rather than relying on completely new networks. However, probably they cannot have the same impact as low orbit satellites or drones. From a policy perspective, there are many things we could do. For example, we could provide public subsidy to fund further rollout of coverage together with government. We could make roaming mandatory. You know, if you go in a place and you are with operator A, if your operator doesn't provide coverage, you would roam to another operator. This doesn't happen in the UK, but in other countries, yes. We could mandate, or we could facilitate, we could fund infrastructure sharing between operators, or we could plan other cost reduction measures. And what we did this year, and this is the big announcement in March 2020, is a single rural network. So among all these different measures, we work with the government and the mobile network operator to focus the investments towards a single rural network shared between the different MNOs in rural areas of the UK, in a way to lower CAPEX and OPEX for MNOs. And this builds around sites that are already existing as a part of the emergency services network, but also new sites funded in part by the government and in part by the MNOs. And this is quite massive because by using this policy measure, each operator will have to deliver 90% of geographic coverage by 2026. And today it is much lower. I think if you go back today, I don't have a number here, but I think it's around 60%, 70% as a function of the operator. Certainly much below 90%. And looking at the technology, I was a bit disappointed by 5G here because 5G hasn't been natively built to improve coverage. You know, it looked at three different areas: enhanced broadband, ultra reliable latest communication, and massive MPC. But it's like coverage was left aside. And in fact, if you compare 5G coverage with 4G coverage, there is an improvement, but it's not massive. And on one side, there is a lot we could do by using existing technologies. For example, if you think about massive MIMO, we could think about massive MIMO redesign to provide coverage in rural areas. And the good thing about rural areas is that it might be easier to use very large antennas at low frequencies. But it also, there is also something else we need to think about more in the long term, which is how we think about a beyond 5G system that we can design from scratch, having in mind coverage and hard to reach areas from the beginning. And these are some of the opportunities for research and innovation. In particular, I think native solutions for range increase, something promising, together with end-to-end design and integration between satellites and beyond 5G. But I know I need to come to an end, and just this is the last slide. Other things we are doing, other areas of focus at the moment, for sure, net zero carbon emissions. We have a program into this. We are looking at new paradigms of pattern sharing. We have a collaboration with different universities in looking how to, for example, enable pattern sharing in a millimeter wave, where you might not need licenses. We're looking at broadcasting, delivery and content creation. We're looking at quality of experience from the point of view of a consumer. And the way we do it is we try to understand what's a good quality of experience for consumers or for businesses in the UK, and then how we can use enablers we have in policy and technology to get closer to that quality of experience. And finally, we are always trying to identify new disruptive areas that could have an impact for us. And a question for you: if you think there is something else we should be looking at in the medium to long term, please send me an email, and it could be an opportunity to do some work together. Thank you. That was my last slide.
Thanks a lot, Federico. It was very interesting. I think if we have some Q&A, no, probably no. But yeah, feel free to write something there as well. Meanwhile, I have a question for you, Federico. Well, actually two, but let's start with the first. The first one is about the coverage. So I think I'm seeing as well here many initiatives from the government that is supporting the diffusion of the broadband in rural areas. We have a plan at the moment here in Ireland, which is the National Broadband Ireland plan. Where basically they're investing a lot of money, and the majority of this money goes to bring and lay down fiber optics in the rural area. So I want just to ask you, what do you think will be the role of wireless as well in closing the coverage gap? Because it seems to me that the majority of these things are driven by fiber optic and fixed network, and perhaps this is as well driven by the fact that new technology are missing, wireless, let's say, or at least companies are not particularly investing in finding new technology to close the gap of the coverage, because not many money are there unless they are supported from the government. So yeah, what is your view here, and what will be your suggestion for research and for the way forward?
Yeah, it's a very good question. We're looking at FWA as another way to provide broadband services. So fiber is key, and there are objectives to the UK government has on fiber. We know there will be some areas which will not be covered in fiber soon, so we need to look at alternatives. And FWA is certainly one of the alternatives, and we're looking at FWA to provide so-called universal coverage. So while we cannot get a good coverage via either fiber or VDSL or cable, then what is the role of wireless and FWA? And there are traditional players in any country using point-to-multipoint traditional services. But we're also looking at FWA and say 4G, 5G based technologies. This certainly is core activity we have as a part of our infrastructure activity. Yeah, in terms of research, is an interesting question. One of the things I see that are challenging for us, you need to have a very good prediction of quality of experience wireless is going to guarantee in a given place. Because only by having a prediction, you can think about how to plan infrastructure in a given place. And with wireless, this is more difficult because it's wireless with respect to peak networks. And this is one of the challenges we have. So thinking about new propagation models that are particularly looking at FWA, thinking about new cluster models using high resolution cluster, for example. To give an example, we saw that simply there is a difference. For example, there is a difference between winter and summer. The coverage in winter is much better than in summer because of trees in some places. And it is very difficult to account, but it's very important.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks. The other question that I have was about the license and the unlicensed spectrum. So will you foresee that in the next years, decades, we will end the license approach, especially now related to the fact that what you mentioned, like these new spectrum sharing technologies that might be used, and also I'm referring to the recent news of the FCC that has released this 1.2 gigahertz of spectrum in the 6 gigahertz band, which is an unlicensed band. So what is your view for the future?
So again, it's a very good question. My view is that we were coming from a world where there were two streams, nationwide licensed spectrum, and we have a licensed spectrum. And we are going to a world where there's going to be something in the middle, where there will be local licenses, which is licensed but not on a nationwide basis. We're going to have hybrid spectrum, where you have LAA is an example, where you have an anchor in the licensed spectrum, and then you have using unlicensed spectrum in a different way. And we will have more licensed spectrum. We are also looking at 6 gigahertz. We are looking with this more spectrum at 60 gigahertz, and we are looking also at 10 hertz spectrum. So we are doing a lot in the licensed spectrum. But I think, and again, this is something for researchers to think, the only way to enable a better spectrum sharing is to make the technology from an algorithm perspective, from a protocol perspective, natively supporting spectrum sharing, which doesn't happen today. So, for example, if I think about deploying 4G or 5G at 3.4 or 4.2 gigahertz band, so outside 5 gigahertz, which is unlicensed band, doesn't have a mechanism to understand whether the same band is used by a fixed link or by a satellite transmitting to a satellite station. By making spectrum aware, using spectrum aware protocols, I think it could make a much bigger impact on spectrum sharing.
Yeah. Thanks. Any other question from the panelists or from the attendees?
Federico, Konstantinos here. I have thank you for the presentation, which was great. A question that is probably on all of our minds. Where would you see a need or a use for these UAV, let's say, based solutions that we are studying? In terms of, where would it be most useful for service? Mostly for, emergency events or special events, or perhaps for some massive IoT applications. I mean, anything off the top of your head that rings a bell?
UAV. So look, I have a colleague, person who is working on this, and until 2 days ago, I was a bit skeptical. I was saying, so why are you doing what? But then I saw a video in Financial Times Online on UAVs, and it's not only from a use case perspective, there are many, but the need of connectivity for UAVs, and then it completely changed my mind. And for this is massive and it's super important, and in anything could be really anything. Logistics, for example, now is becoming a priority here in the UK. Connectivity, for example, we ran a trial together with the Aviation Authority 2 weeks ago to transport some medicines from, I think it was Southampton, to the Isle of Wight by using a drone. And we needed to provide some connectivity to this drone, and there are other trials happening in the UK. Traffic control, I think, is going to be, and I've realized after watching this video, is going to be massive, and it's something we need to think about more.
Okay, thank you. Any material you can share will be great.
I'll do more. I connected to a colleague who is working into this area, is living this area in Ofcom, so we can have a meeting. Is it okay?
Great. Thank you very much. Thanks, Federico.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Federico. I think Christos, maybe we can do the break.
Yeah.
No,
I think it's time for a bit of a coffee break.
Yeah. The only thing is that it seems that there are some issue with the audio for the attendees. So yeah, I don't know if this is the case or for only few of them or for many of them, but yeah, perhaps let us know if we can do something. But yeah, it's very strange, but I think it should be okay. And
yeah, let's see if we can fix anything over the coffee break. So let's take 10 minutes and try to stick to our schedule and be back at 11. What do you guys say? For our next talk from Oliver, who has a lot to say, he told us in the morning, so we might as well start on time.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Okay.
So, Chris, do you want